Hello everyone, and welcome back to Producing Music. My name is Non-Weary, and in this video, we're going to be breaking down a Moombahton track. So if that's something you've been trying to create recently, if you like that dark, underwater, clubby sound, 2 a.m. sound, then I think you're going to learn a lot from this video. We're going to start, as always, with the drums and work our way up, and you can skip around to find the part that you want. So let's just get right into it. First thing we have is our kick. Now, the main thing about this, you can pick any sample you really want, but it has to be super compressed, and it has to be super short. So I took this sample, it was originally about this long, but you want to cut it so that it only takes up about a 16th. Very wood, very knocky. It's going to hit hard when the drop comes. And then secondly, you want to add a snare in the typical Moombahton beat, just like this. And for the snares processing, you just want to make sure that your levels are controlled by using a compressor, and then make sure it's airy enough, but also tight. Then you're going to want to take some loops and chop them up to get a nice rhythm. And this one is from a Cashmere pack, of course, and it sounds like this with the kick and snare. For some variation, you're going to want to add a couple more of these in the second part of the drop. First one is a hi-hat pan to the left, and the second one is a clap groove pan to the left. And for this entire group of drums, I have a glue compressor, I have an overdrive to add some distortion on the high end, and I have an EQ to manage some of the levels and cut out the lows. And then really importantly, I have a reverb set to a minimal dry-wet ratio so that it puts all of the drums in the same space. Next, we can move on to bass. And for that, I'm using an 808 sample from Murda Beats. And what I'm doing to it is I'm adding a high-low split and doing a little bit of multiband processing. So for the highs, everything above 100 hertz, I have a saturator that's really crushing it, and then I have a utility to make it a little bit wider. Everything under 100 hertz is mono to make sure that it works with mono capability. And then as a utility, recently what I've been doing is I've been using gain as my sidechain. I find that it gives me a lot more control. So you can see here that this curve matches the kick volume almost identically. So when you play them together, it sounds like they're only one unit. And then to glue them together, I have a glue compressor. Let's talk about the main element now. I'm gonna go into the chops. So what I did for this is how I start all of my music. I go into Arcade and I find a vocal sample, and then I use my MIDI keyboard and I just mess around for a little bit. So this is the original pattern that I created. It sounds like this. And so what I did was I created two different versions, one for the break and one for the drop. The one for the break is darker, and the one for the drop is lighter. So it creates that contrast and really raises the energy when the drop hits. And for both of them, the processing looks pretty similar. But what I did was first, I added multiband dynamics and removed a lot of the lows. And then I used kind of a radio EQ, cutting the lows and highs. I have OTT to make the sounds brighter, to get rid of some of that muddiness. And then I went through and I really diligently went through some of the frequencies and cut out ones that I didn't like or that didn't sound good, especially in this muddy range. And so very similarly for the top, I did the same thing, except I added some overdrive, more OTT, and some saturation. And then I did some mid-side EQ to make sure that it sounded very wide in the mix. And I'm using the same technique with the gain here. I really can't emphasize this enough. I feel like it lets me control my sidechain really, really well, because this one I didn't want a lot of sidechain, but I just wanted a little bit. So for the bass, I had it being negative infinity gain, but for this one I only have it negative 15, which just makes it a little more pumpy. And then lastly, we have some effects here that just go on top. We have this brass sample. And what this is doing is it's filling up a frequency range that isn't being occupied by any of the other elements. This brass really fits in this mid to low range, whereas the bass fits the low, the sample fits the mid to highs, and then all of the drums fit the high frequencies. So without it, it feels like there's a part missing from the track, if that makes any sense. And so I added it just to fill up the space a little bit more. And then we have a crash, which is just panned a little bit to the left. And then we have a hey sample, which is panned all the way. And then lastly, we just have a couple instruments that come in on the break. The first one is a guitar sample that I have cut all of the highs from. I just want this nice gritty bass sound. And then I have a pad, which I'm just taking a very specific frequency range from. So with the chops in the beginning, this kind of sets the mood for the whole track. And with that sidechain with the kick that's introduced right from the moment you start listening to the track, it just kind of already gets you moving and gets you going. And when the drop hits, you're ready to go crazy. All right, that seems to about do it. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you made it this far, I'm going to play the whole track. And if you liked it, please leave a like, consider subscribing, and I'll see you in the next one.